Well, good morning, and thank you all for being here. This morning, we received some of our revenue numbers for December. I wanted to go through some of them. They're surprisingly strong. We brought in 10.9% more than we did the same time this month a year ago. And that's an encouraging sign, and it requires a great deal of thought to approach as we get ready for the revenue estimates in the legislature. I'm going to invite BFM Commissioner Terwilliger to give a little more additional context. Twigs?
Yeah, thank you, Governor. As the Governor mentioned, we just received our January collections for sales tax. So that represents kind of the holiday sales that actually occur in December. They're up 10.9% year over year. And so that was a good surprise. And so that's the best growth we've seen in over 3 years. And so certainly positive. Also, we kind of look at that and it kind of looks like an anomaly. So we have to dig into those numbers a little bit, see what that means as the Appropriations Committee does its work. Next week, they'll be hearing revenue estimates, making final decisions as it approaches those phases to begin the final phases of building the budget. But certainly welcome news. I think it shows that, you know, there was some pretty solid consumer spending and probably some year-end spending that went on in this last month. And so welcome news. Certainly better to be on that side of the equation than the other. And so with that, I'll turn it back over to the Governor.
Thank you. So a year ago, when I took this office, I pledged that 2 pillars of my administration would be openness and responsiveness. And I pledged that to the people, but also to the press. Today is News Media Day at the Capitol, and so we have a few dozen additional people, I think, at the Capitol from all over the state that are here. So I'd like to take the opportunity to recommit to you that I won't be hard to find. We're here to be open, responsive, and as transparent as we can be. A year ago on News Media Day, I held a roundtable discussion. I think a number of you were at that discussion. You shared some feedback with me on where my administration could improve on responsiveness, and I think that we've addressed those issues. We'll always do our best to respond to your questions, and you might not always like the answers you get, but you'll always get a response of some kind. So today, before I turn it over for questions, I'd like to extend the opportunity once again for you to provide feedback to me. If there's any way we can improve, we'd like to know about it. And I'll preface this by saying I know there's issues with Josie being so hard to work with and obstinate, but we'll work on that. So the floor is yours. Any input for me?
Governor or Commissioner Terwilliger, can you say how much, what in terms of real dollars, the increase in sales taxes is, and any early preference you have on what to do with that money?
I'll put a hold on that question, and first I want to give everybody a chance if there's something that you want to, a bone you want to pick with me as far as the way we've handled the press or anything. We'll talk about that right now and we'll get to questions in a second. Yes, sir.
Governor, I appreciate your responsiveness to last year's request. From my point of view, my staff's point of view, things have gotten a little bit better. We still are waiting at times weeks for responses from different departments.
I'll have Josie respond.
Thanks, we appreciate your question. Sorry, I'm a little shorter than the Governor. So to answer your question, like the Governor said, we are really committed to being open and responsive. And within that same vein, we also want to be truthful and accurate because you guys deserve accurate information. The people of South Dakota deserve accurate information. And so sometimes that means that we need to take a little more time to gather information, do research, and put together a sound response that's truthful and accurate. No one's interested in giving you inaccurate information. I will agree with you that there are certainly times where we can improve on timeliness, and so we'll continue to work through that. And if there is a specific agency that you're working on a specific inquiry and it's taking too long, you are more than welcome to reach out to me directly. I know you have my phone number. You've called me multiple times on some of those, and we've worked through those as we've gone. And one helpful thing for all of you that has been helpful for me and helpful for a lot of the spokespeople is to clearly say what your deadline is, because it's helpful for us. We got lots of inquiries to go through, and we will always try and do our best to meet your deadline. But yeah, so thank you for that.
What's the status of that request portal? For a while, everything had to go through that portal, and you had to make, basically, I don't think it's not any different, but to request anything, you had to go through and make a formal sort of request through the information portal. And now it seems like sometimes that's not being used, and, I'd rather not use that. I'd rather call an agency and, or get the email and directly try to reach someone. Is that still in play? Is that something we're supposed to still use, or?
Are you talking about open records requests?
Yeah, the portal system. Is that the only way to go, or?
Yeah, I mean, obviously every inquiry is different, and like I said, we want to make sure that we're being truthful and accurate. And so some inquiries are an easy phone call, some are easily answered with an email, and there's other things for some of those public records requests that do go through the portal. And I think there's a 10-day period that we have to turn those around. So the open records requests go through that process, but other direct media inquiries go through the standard reaching out to either me or the agencies.
And I'd just add, I have seen improvement, so thank you for that.
Good. Any other input before we move on to questions? Very good. So you want to restate your question again, please?
Sure, just with the improvement in the sales tax, you gave the percentage. What does that translate to in real dollars more that the state will have? And then, do you have any early read on if there's extra money in the budget, where that will go?
Well, I'll start that by saying, I believe the 10, well, I'll just let you come and talk about it.
Yeah, thank you for the question. And so, what does that mean in real dollars? And so when we look at the revenue picture and we take the adopted estimate that was adopted from a year ago and the governor's revised numbers that he delivered in December 2nd, we kind of chop those up so we can see how much should come in every month. And so this last month, we actually projected that sales tax would grow about 4%. That would hit the target that we were looking for, and it actually came in at like close to 11. And so what that means in real dollars, it was about 14.9 million higher than a year ago. And then compared to the governor's budget was about 9.9 million higher. And so to kind of sum that up, really we have to look at what that means for the revenue estimates for the rest of fiscal year 2026 and how much of that might carry forward to the fiscal year 2027 budget. And the fiscal year 2027 budget, we consider that the ongoing revenue picture. And that's where things have been kind of tight this last year. And so we really have to look at that, see if there's some anomalies in the numbers. We don't expect we're going to get 11, 12% growth in sales tax month after month. I think the economy we're in right now is somewhere around 4%, give or take. And so we'll have to look at all that big picture wise and how that plays into the budget conversations. Some of the areas I think that, we've discussed is, would there be enough of a revenue increase in the ongoing budget to potentially do some inflation? That yet remains to be determined if there's enough there.
You have that bar chart?
Yeah, so we look at we'll put this up on our website later today. And so this shows the chart, and the blue bars represent year-over-year growth rates of our sales tax. And it shows all of fiscal year 2025 on your left side of the chart. And then on the right side is the first 7 months of fiscal year 2026. Okay, and so this most recent month that's up around just short of 12% That's the growth rate that we've seen this last month. So it kind of sticks out. So we have to dig into that, do analysis and answer the questions. Was there some anomalies that went in it? Certainly there probably are, and then really figure out what that means going forward. Yeah.
Yeah, and I would just add on the revenue estimating side, it's important to keep in mind when we're estimating revenue for next year, we're talking about a period that starts July 1 of '26 and ends June 30 of '27. So we're projecting almost a year and a half ahead. And the tricky thing about that, where's your chart? The tricky thing about that is you look at these several months here and you see where it's pretty good, down a little, pretty good, down a little, and then way up. What does this actually tell you about what's gonna be going on 18 months from now? Does it change the perspective that much one way or the other? That's the question that, you know, I chaired the subcommittee on revenue estimates a year or two, and that's the question that subcommittee will have to grapple with coming up next week, so.
I would add to that, you know, that's part of the reason with Tony's comments is why we settled on leaving 12.5% in our budget reserve accounts, because of that uncertainty that we've been facing in recent couple of years.
On that question, on the sales tax increase projections, is there specific counties that are driving that growth? Are there specific activities?
On what?
On the sales tax increase, the projections.
Yeah, I mean, at this time, we don't have any county breakouts for this last month, and so those statistics will all come out here in the next couple of weeks once all these reports get filed. This is just the high-level state number that just came released this morning, and so we don't have any insight on what's driven that location-wise at this point.
Given these numbers, is there a potential that you may readdress how you handle the big three in the next budget?
Well, I'd say all the cards are on the table, and from my perspective, that is, you know, that's high on my radar as far as if we did have the ability to look at that as an option, then certainly we'll consider that. Yes, sir.
A little far away. Kind of in the vein of the sales tax, yesterday there was a bill that died in House State Affairs that would have given data centers a 50-year sales tax break. Some of the opponents on that bill had kind of made the argument that they were, you know, going through this bill would, if this bill passed, it would leave money on the table in terms of sales tax. There is another bill that has been filed by Senator Casey Crabtree that would effectively, again, try to attempt to give part of the bill would try to give a sales tax break to data centers. Have you, you know, in terms of data centers, have you accounted for like whether sales tax is you know, would be a thing that you would support, you know, giving a sales tax exemption, or, you know, do you think if we bring that data centers to the state, you know, that, you know, having their equipment pay towards sales tax would be a thing you would support?
Yeah, well, we'll consider everything that comes to my desk, and the bills that are working their way through the process. We've got a whole spectrum of bills dealing with issues like the data centers and other things, and so when the dust settles, you know, my view is we're going to do everything we can to keep South Dakota open for opportunity. And I think it's hard to deny that data centers represent a big opportunity for South Dakota. And so where that lands coming through the legislature, we'll review it when it gets to my desk.
At this point in time, you know, would you support giving them an exemption, whether that's 10 or 20 or 50 year on sales tax?
Well, I haven't been into those discussions to that depth, but I do believe that, I think there's a lot of misinterpretation as far as some of these incentives when they're calling them corporate welfare, and that we're taking money out of the rest of the taxpayer pocket. That's disturbing to me because that's just not accurate. They're providing incentives that many other states are doing, or that's what they're considering. And so in a lot of ways, it's pretty justifiable to provide some incentives. What they look like, we'll see at the end of the day.
To piggyback on that, of course, you had declared that national security was going to be the next big industry. But so Steve Del Bianco, who represents a lot of these data centers at the federal level, had said that, with 40 other states that 40 other states that exempt the equipment, the sales tax for data center operation equipment, there's just no incentive to go to South Dakota. So do you still, like basically saying that they're not going to come to the state unless they get this sales tax? So with the death of House Bill 1005 yesterday, do you still think that's possible to have it be the next big industry, national security?
Well, I've been through, I was a legislator through 16 legislative sessions and then 6 years as lieutenant governor. And the one thing I know for sure is nothing is truly dead until sine die. Everything's still on the table.
Can I say a little something?
Sure.
I would just add, speaking to the national security focus, we have a lot of different reasons to believe that South Dakota has pieces in place to have a strong national security focus. Everything from the announcement in December with MMS in Sioux Falls to everything at Ellsworth and the cybersecurity. Data centers could be a significant piece of that, but it's not the only piece. I do think it is important, and you mentioned this in your question, to understand that South Dakota is unusual in that we tax equipment in manufacturing. I think 40 or 42 states do not. And so what we're talking about here is potentially a rebate of a tax that most states don't have. We have a very broad sales tax base in South Dakota, and that goes back to when Governor Janklow cut property taxes in 1995 and broadened the sales tax base into a lot of areas to replace that revenue. So that's really why we find ourselves in the situation we're in. In many other states, they aren't talking about this because they don't tax it anyway.
And a lot of those discussions kind of ignore the fact that even with an exemption on equipment, those data centers will pay literally millions of dollars in local taxes and state taxes, property taxes, not to mention the employees and whatnot. So there is a lot of things to consider.
We're gonna go to the phones for a few questions, and then we'll come right back into the room for some more. Okay, we'll come back in.
Yes, sir.
When we met last year, one of the issues that was discussed was the relationship between the state and the tribes. When you came into office, things were, shall we say, tense, and you made a commitment to try and open things up. Could you give us a status report from your perspective where things stand today?
Yeah, certainly appreciate the question. Well, we talked about this the first week of session. We had the State of the Tribes address, and we'd been trying to have meetings with the Rosebud Tribal Council and their chairman, Woodenknife, and we lined up a meeting that day. And as they were coming in after that address, it was totally impromptu. But a lot of the other tribal members, they thought we were having a meeting, so they just showed up. We packed this room, and we ended up with 6 tribal chairmen and representatives from tribal council for 8 of the 9 tribes. And I'll tell you, that was encouraging to me, because we had, I don't know how long the discussion was, just give and take questions, hour, a little over an hour. And they asked questions that about certain things that was non-negotiable with me, and I told them so. And they seemed to appreciate that. We agreed that the most important aspect of relationships is effective communications, and we continue to take steps to cultivate that communication. Just lined up another meeting with Cheyenne River Sioux Tribe Chairman. And I've not had much, they're the closest reservation to where I live, but had not had much communication with them, so I'm looking forward to the discussion there. But yeah, it's been encouraging to me, the relationship we've developed with the tribes.
Blake has a question, if you could.
Well,
If there's so.
Just to follow up, given this improved communication, what do you see from the state's perspective are the most pressing issues that need to be addressed beyond communication?
Well, certainly, I think law enforcement on the reservations they have a distinct shortage in law enforcement. And we've taken steps, some pretty dramatic steps, in the state to come alongside the tribes. And, we have tribal, law enforcement that are training alongside, our officers in the law enforcement center. We also passed legislation, even this year, is that bill still working its way through the process? That changes the definition of law enforcement, so that law enforcement officers on the reservation have the same standing legally as state law enforcement.
What were some of the things they asked for that were non-negotiable with you?
Well, one of the first conversations I had was about the fireworks at Mount Rushmore, about undoing that and declining to have the fireworks this July. I told them very politely that wasn't negotiable, that we were too far down the road and it was going to happen. And I think they seem to appreciate just an honest, open, direct answer like that. We went on to have some very good conversation on other topics.
Yeah, Governor, I saw the federal delegation sent a letter to President Trump urging him to declare disaster over the windstorms. I know this is something you've been seeking. A, can you just talk about getting that support from the federal delegation? And B, maybe give us an update on where you're at right now with trying to get that secured.
Well, yeah, it was a couple weeks ago now that I signed a declaration, a disaster declaration, and yes, it's encouraging it. Our federal delegation is working with us, and so now we're it's wait and see what FEMA decides to do with that. But it's always encouraged to me, and I think it's, again, about relationships, and I've tried to foster a close relationship, working relationship with our congressional members, along with a lot of the cabinet secretaries and federal officials.
Governor, on January 16th, the Department of Justice submitted a court document about an ongoing case stating that the Social Security Administration discovered a secret document between a DOJ staffer and an undisclosed political advocacy group, which called for sharing of Social Security data with the aim of overturning elections in certain states. Are you concerned about the sanctity of South Dakotans' Social Security information?
Well, I'm not aware of that news story, but yeah, we're always concerned about the security of our citizens' personal information. I've not heard anything that raises a great deal of alarm to me at this point.
We have time for two more questions.
Governor Bob Mercer with Kellerland. And this, I'm going to ask you about a bill that's related to something you have ongoing with the Attorney General, which is over abortion pills. And one, I wondered if the Attorney General has briefed you on how the hearing went in New York. And two, do you think abortion pills can be prohibited from coming through the mail into South Dakota?
I had a briefing from the Attorney General about 4 or 5 days ago, and I don't think he had, he told me what the process would be, and I haven't talked to him since. You know, when, was that just in the last couple of days?
I talked to him about it yesterday, but I don't know if he told me.
Do you have any
Well, I
signals?
mean, I think the long and short of it is that he had a hearing in federal district court in New York, and the judge has not ruled. And he actually saw that as favorable in some ways, because he was concerned that the judge would just rule on the spot against him, given the tenor of how it came up. But as of last night anyway, he had not gotten a ruling yet, and if there is an adverse ruling, I think it's his intention to appeal that, which would be in the Second Circuit Court of Appeals. That's the legal posture of it. There's also a state court hearing coming up in South Dakota in a week or two, I think, later in February, so.
To answer your question, though, my personal view is, and obviously I'm not a lawyer, but abortions are illegal in South Dakota. It's hard for me to believe that they rule that we can't stop a product like the abortion pill from coming into our state.
I don't know, I mean, Ms. Ringley's in the room, are you willing to answer the questions about the SNAP benefits? You had talked about how, well, it just, whether or not a application to remove soft drinks from the list of SNAP benefits, I mean, I guess I'll just ask, what do you think about that? Because it sounds like it's just too costly for the state government.
Well, first of all, I want to be clear that I believe, you know, in Trump's plan to make America healthy again, I have no issues with redefining whether or not soft drinks should be part of the SNAP program. And in fact, I think something like 90% of the legislators agree with me on that by virtue of the resolution they passed. My issue is, why would we as a state take on responsibility that costs hundreds of thousands of dollars to the state to administer a program, a federal program? You know, in the One Big Beautiful Bill, they established the framework to create a task force to do, instead of states doing individual waivers, for the federal government to take care of this. And that's the way it should be handled. Instead of having 27 states or whatever doing these individual waivers, makes no sense to me. Congress should get to work and take care of this. And that's what the resolution said. That's what 90% of our legislators supported. And it's only common sense. I get a little tight-jawed when people are critical of that, because to me it's just common sense that it's a federal program. If the federal government and Congress agrees that this is the right thing to do to exempt soft drinks, then they should do it, period.
Thank you all, appreciate it. If you have outstanding questions, don't hesitate to reach out to me directly.
Can I just get one more question?
Sure, why not?
Governor, I've been doing some investigation onto today, and I understand that you have a twin sister who has her birthday today. Could you confirm or deny whether it's your birthday also?
Yes, I will confirm that I have a twin sister that had a birthday today.
Happy birthday.
I'll tell you a story. It was back years ago, and the first year I was majority leader, I was on my way up to caucus and I was running late, and I run into my twin sister, Lori. And I stopped and I said, "What are you doing here?" She said, "Oh, I just came to visit." I said, "Well, I'm sorry, I'm going to caucus. I'll catch you later." And I went to my caucus. So I think I'm the only twin in history that's forgot his sister's birthday. In fairness, I forgot it was mine. Thank you all.